We had a very exciting discussion in Abuja about your take of the role of regional integration agenda, the way policymakers see, but then the contrasting that to the reality of infrastructure development finance. So if you could share some of your thoughts on those, that'd be great.
Is this working? Good morning, everybody, and thank you very much. Firstly, on project development, actually, we in the Africa Finance Corporation believe that this is really if not the major bottleneck to infrastructure development in Africa. The truth of the matter is that from where we're sitting, there's actually a fair amount of money that's available to invest in infrastructure projects. And while people talk about huge amounts of investment that are required in infrastructure, the funds that are available from multilateral institutions, from commercial banks, have not actually yet been exhausted. There may be sort of certain gaps in certain types of capital, but generally speaking, today there's more capital looking for projects than there are projects. And clearly the demand exists, and as we've seen in the example of telecoms, and I also had the privilege of working with Omari in the telecoms department in IFC, although I can't claim any credit at all for Celtel, much as I would like to. But the point I'm making is that Africans are willing to pay for infrastructure or for services if they're provided in a decent way. And in our view, one of the really missing gaps is the ability to form projects which are of a standard that makes them bankable. And you know, we often speak to other DFIs, and you know, frankly, we're all running around looking for projects, you know, that meet our criteria to invest. So this is a major problem, and I think it's compounded by the fact that the skills and the capital to do this don't really exist in Africa. In my view, it's better for Africans to do this than for people to come from outside the continent to try and develop projects in our continent. They don't necessarily understand how things happen. Their views of risks and how to mitigate them obviously are maybe not as nuanced as people who live in the continent, and their ability to just get things done with their government interlocutors is also maybe not so great. But it's clear that in Africa, simply because these haven't been done before, there's not a great sort of reservoir of skills. And it also costs a lot of money, and this is something that people don't recognize often. It can cost between 5 and 10% of the overall project cost to develop a project. So if you think that you know, 200 megawatt power plant would cost something like $250 million, maybe even a little bit more, you'd need $12 to $20 million to develop that project. You know, that's not a trivial sum of money. And that's why a number of organizations like ourselves, like the IFC and others, have project development units. We have a group of people who have an experience in developing projects. Some have run ports, some have done power projects. We also have a pool of money. It's about $30 to $50 million, so it's not huge in the context of what is required, but it's still a substantial sum. And we use that expertise and that money either to develop projects ourselves, and I'm glad the minister from Cape Verde is here, because one of our success stories is a wind farm project in that country called Cabiolica, which we're the biggest shareholder of. It's a 26 megawatt power plant. It's been up and running for about a year now. It's been doing very well. We had a great amount of support from the government in doing that, and we continue to do this to get their support. This project is going to eventually provide about half of the power for Cape Verde, which is quite impressive. But we have this unit, and the other thing we try to do with this unit is also to strengthen other developers, because again, we can't do it all ourselves. So we're working, for example, on a project, a geothermal project in Kenya, where we're providing support to the developers. You know, we have to help them negotiate PPAs. We have to help them bid out EPC contracts, negotiate with various suppliers, and also with the government in terms of payment support. These things are quite difficult, quite complicated. It can take 5 to 7 years to develop a power project in Africa, which is really not good enough. We also support, and Harith are here, private project development companies. I know Harith have invested in one that has a couple of power plants they've done in Africa. So this is something that is coming up, and there are some African developers that are coming up. And it's something that we need to continue and to focus on more than we have in the past. On the second question, I'll just quickly say that I believe that regional integration is something that's very important. One of the previous speakers referred to the number of countries in Africa. You know, there are 54, 52 countries on a continent that's sort of roughly the size of India, both in terms of population and in terms of size. What this means in reality is that, and you know, to be frank, many countries are actually subscale, and you know, really can't do well on their own without being very well integrated with other countries. I believe, and you know, I think many people get this, which is why there's a lot of talk about regional integration. But unfortunately, I think that the regional integration is often pushed from the point of view of government wish lists, as opposed to things that are really practical and will make a difference. And that's why there's so many of these regional integration projects that have been sort of around for many years, and you know, which haven't been done. I think the projects that meet a very strong need from a lot of people, and I'll give you a couple. Fiber optic cables. You know, we currently have about 4 going down the east coast of Africa, one of which I believe was pushed by the EU, some by, AU, some by private companies. And we have three or four going down the west coast of Africa. Again, some done by regional groupings, the SAT3 cable, and some done by private companies. You've got WAX, you've got Main One, which actually both of us are invested in, and you've got Globacom and another one that's coming up. So I think that we need to rethink some of these regional infrastructure projects and really try and promote those private sector-driven ones that are actually being pushed by a real demand and a real willingness to pay for these services, as opposed to maybe some more theoretical ones that may be good, but are not really being driven by demand. Thank you.
Doing business in Africa, you can't afford to be without Africa Investor.